Expired. I call the Honourable Clayton Cosgrave.
Mr. Speaker, I've got to say, after that speech, well, I won't even dwell on that speech. The speech I want to dwell on, Mr. Speaker, is that of John Archibald Banks, the Honourable John Archibald Banks, the man who already has one conviction to his name some years ago, and now he's up for a second crack, you know. He supported 3 strikes, and he's on his way to number 2, and there'll be number 3. This man talked, he used the word shakedown, sir. Now, I've got to say, if anybody knows about a shakedown, it's John Archibald Banks. This guy's like a Chicago gangster. The only thing that's missing is the trench coat, the felt hat, and the violin case. But he's got the brown bag, sir, of course, and it was full of cash. For that man to stand up, inept as he is, and talk about a shakedown is incredible. I got to say, this guy's got a chin, a glass jaw, but he's got a chin a mile long, and he leads with it, sir. If anybody would know about a shakedown, having already experienced the long arm of the law with a conviction, it would be John Archibald Banks. What a cracker. Old brown bag himself. If anybody would know about putting his hand out, dipping it in the honey jar, that boy would.
Honourable John.
I heard you loud and clear recently to another member saying members must be referred to as honourable members and no name-calling by the Goosters opposite.
No, well, that's...
Speaking the point of order.
No, sit down. Now, that doesn't help. You bring up a point of order which was one that had some merit, and then you added on to it and diffused the whole argument. Now, it's Honourable Clayton Cosgrave.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
No, you're on the...
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Clayton Cosgrave.
Mr. Speaker, I just say, as far as I'm aware, Mr. Banks is the Honourable
I'm inviting you to carry on with the speech.
Well, I use his correct title, the Honourable John Archibald Banks, because that was the name I think the police hung around his neck when they photographed him and booked him before he was convicted. The Honourable John Archibald Banks. Booked, charged and convicted, and he loves the court system. He was police minister at one point, wasn't he? I think he was. He used to keep certain photographs, I'm told, in his desk and talk to his mate Emmett Sharkey over the RT as he drove in the ministerial limousine. I remember, sort of breaker, 9-1. I'm in this sort of artillery vehicle, come in, are you there? And he loves the court system so much that he's going back for another crack. You know, the revolving door. Well, I say to Mr. Banks, think about your words very carefully. If anybody would know about a shakedown, that boy certainly would, sir. But I want to say this as we address the legislation before us, and that is this. I'm also mindful of another contribution that was made tonight by the Honourable Chris Finlayson. He interjected on Mr. Twyford a couple of times as the Greens sort of played 1 lollipop for you and 2 lollipops for us in terms of who led the charge on transport and housing. I just say to the Greens, here's the go. We collectively managed to change the minds of these geniuses over there, and the big engine that couldn't, Jerry Brownlee, is now the big engine that could. Decoupled and now recoupled to the Auckland City Link. So rather than playing sort of, competitive, silly, childish politics, let's actually celebrate that we actually managed to change the minds of these geniuses over there. But Chris Finlayson summed it up. He interjected on Mr. Twyford by saying, quote, "It's our idea now. It's our idea now." And I got to say, Mr. Finlayson, good on you for telling the truth, because they opposed it, they railed against it, excuse the pun. Jerry Brownlee went out there utterly opposed to it. You ask some of the manufacturers and the business associations up there, they wonder who Jerry Brownlee is as Transport Minister. They say, we've never seen him, which I find reasonably hard to believe. But anyway, he's elsewhere. There is no transport strategy. So they've dipped into their big pockets, and suddenly a road to Damascus experience has occurred, and this side of the House has managed to talk some sense into them, and they've changed their minds. So I agree, Mr. Finlayson, it is your idea now, or the National Party's idea now, as they will go around Auckland and try and explain why they've had the biggest U-turn from the biggest member in our history and actually backed Auckland City. But I say this legislation, sir, and these appropriations, these are very interesting. Well, again, Mr. Banks would know about appropriations. He appropriates a lot to himself. He just can't remember whether he signs the cheque or not, or who gave it to him. So I say to Mr. Banks, cool your heels. Sir, Maggie Barry got up and talked about what they inherited as a government. Well, I got to say, there are porkies, and then there's what Maggie Barry talks about. That's a different level of porkies, sir. Because here's the deal from the noxious weed. Here's the deal. when that government came into power, they inherited 9 years of surpluses. 9 years of surpluses from this government and zero Crown debt. Zero Crown debt. Now, Maggie Barry might have been a bit too close to the compost heap or the Roundup, I don't know, or the fertiliser, whatever it is, but her memory of history, or 1080, her memory of history has left her and is bereft. Because the truth is, the facts are, sir, 9 years of surpluses under a Labor government and zero Crown debt. Now, that is not spin. That is not PR. No, well, shakedown over there. That is actually a historic fact. And it was Bill English, I think, who actually conceded that on coming to government. So if we look at this economy, sir, there's been a lot of talk about how great this economy is. How great, well, the good people of Epsom, I don't know if they're coming up with any brown bags and cheques, Mr Banks. I don't know, you might be able to remember their name. Here's the problem with this economy, sir. It is a two-speed economy. You go into the regions, they are withering. You go to any region in this country, they are doing it hard, the people are doing it hard, the unemployment is up. We have 90,000 young people, not in education, not in training. And I say this as a Cantabrian, sir, that the biggest opportunity to build something out of the tragedy that was and is the earthquake was the ability to train those young people, get them off the dole, use the dole as we proposed, as a help to the boss and the employer to take them on and train them as apprentices. Mr Brownlee got up here 3 years ago and said we're going to need 30,000, 40,000 people to rebuild Christchurch. Fact, true. The opportunity was, sir, because an apprenticeship takes around 3 years. We could have had 40,000 young people, unemployed young people, off the dole, paying tax, earning a wage, swinging a hammer and having a superb qualification and contributing to the rebuild had Mr Brownlee and Mr Banks, that rotten pile that holds the House of National up, had they actually said, we'll do it. We'll back those young people rather than gateways, pathways, caves, roads to nowhere and cycleways that have generated very few jobs. They could have done that, a practical thing. They say we couldn't afford it. We said use the dole. Use the unemployment benefit, give that to the boss, the building firm, let him use that as a bit of help to get that person off, to train them, and a bit of help because the cost of training a young person in year one when you've got to supervise before they can add value are quite substantial. Doesn't cost the taxpayer any more than allowing 90,000 young people to languish on the dole. But these geniuses over here did nothing. So now what are we doing? We're importing our Irish and Filipino and other friends and brothers and sisters from overseas to fill those jobs because the businesses that are going to reconstruct the houses, the plumbers, the carpenters and the sparkies, cannot wait 3 years, nor can the earthquake victims, to have their lives and their houses restored. It is a two-speed economy when you look at it age-wise, sir. Younger New Zealanders locked out of first home ownership. Again, these geniuses, after substantial policy produced from this side about housing, suddenly realised Crosby Textor got a poll up and they said, oh, there's a housing problem. Except Mr Brownlee in Christchurch, because there's no manufacturing crisis in New Zealand, no housing crisis in Canterbury, it doesn't exist. But 5 years into their term, they decide they're going to do something about it. Then we have the other economic speeds, of course, where exporters and manufacturers struggle while the speculators flourish. And of course the speculators and those, and I asked these geniuses in the debate last session, sir, do they think it is equitable that the top 10% in this land got 40% of the tax cuts? And I give them the opportunity again to say yes, is that equitable? Oh no, the old tumbleweed at the back doesn't say anything. No, silence. Because they know there is no credibility in trying to say that the top 10% getting 40% of the tax cuts, that is equitable, sir. While manufacturers and others and young people and unemployed and those on fixed incomes and benefits get nothing, very little, and struggle away as prices go up, sir. It is a two-speed economy. Take Auckland. Growth is rampant in house prices. Not production, not jobs, of course. If you want to sell a house, you're on the upside. If you want to buy a house, especially if you're young and you can't get the deposit, you are locked out, sir. They are locked out, sir. No, you're never locked out, sir. You're always in. Two-speed, of course, in regard to fairness. We talked about the tax cuts. What do the elderly people say when they get their first or second winter power bill at the moment? And John Key says, of course, you are not paying too much for power. You should be grateful, Mr. Key says. The people should be grateful. Simon Bridges says the same thing. They say the people are not paying too much for power. But you ask them at what point they will be paying too much, and they can't answer. I say, sir, these people over here have a lot to answer for, but they will not answer this question. They will not answer the question as to whether their policies are equitable, fair, and whether they are helping all New Zealanders, not just their rich mates.
I call Scott Simpson.
Mr. Speaker, it's interesting to be following that member